Hey everyone, it's Dr. Justin Sung here. I'm a former medical doctor and now full-time learning coach and consultant, and welcome to another episode of Overrated Underrated, where we're going to be going through lots of different ideas and I'm going to be explaining my take on them as briefly as possible.
Brain dumps.
Brain dumps are underrated because most people don't know them. I'm pretty sure it's not a commonly known technique. It's one of the more common ones, I think, but it's still fairly underutilized. Yeah, brain dumps are good, they're effective. You need to be able to do different orders of learning for brain dumps. Don't just do the lower order ones. Lower order brain dumps are good for lower order retrieval practice, but you need to make sure that that's not the only method of retrieval practice. Like, make sure to hit the higher orders because you're gonna get tested at the higher orders anyway.
Self-care.
Self-care is so misunderstood, and for that reason, I'd say it's very underrated. And I say this as someone who probably doesn't do enough self-care myself. And I'm also internally saying I'm underrating it myself. But you can't pour out of an empty cup, right? But most people, it's not like empty cup. It's like the cup is broken and the hand is cut, and then the person is scarred from ever holding a cup ever again. People will push themselves to the point not of tiredness, not of exhaustion, not of fatigue, not at the point that they should rest, but way beyond that point, and they'll cycle through that point again and again and again through burnout, to get to the point where now they're just completely depleted. Especially in Asian countries where there's a lot of pressure to just have that success of whatever that means. So self-care is underrated, really underrated.
Hell yeah or no?
Hell yeah, hell no. In terms of the decision-making practice, I'm presuming this is definitely underrated. Yeah. There are so many decisions that you can make that are so much simpler when you realize that this decision doesn't require me to think too much, because the consequence of failure versus the potential benefit is not significant enough for this decision to be that meaningful. The idea is that if it's not a hell yeah or hell no decision, then it doesn't really matter. Just make the decision and then go with it. It's not worth just mulling over it too much. And this is a really, really complicated field. I don't want to go into it too deep to keep it brief. But overall, look it up, underrated.
Studying ahead of class.
Yeah, definitely underrated. But you don't have to be studying everything ahead of class. I think the issue is that most people don't know how to study ahead of class in a way that's effective for them, that is good priming. When people study ahead of class, they still study at lower orders ahead of class, and that is honestly a little bit pointless. There is still a benefit, but that amount of time could have been used for something that's so much more productive. And people aren't used to working with purely higher order structures before filling in lower order detail. But if you were able to do that, then that method of pre-study or priming is very helpful. And also, all the ways that I teach about pre-study or priming in any of my other videos are teaching the more effective way, FYI.
Virtual meetings.
People hate virtual meetings. I think they're underrated because people hate them. I don't love having virtual meetings, but honestly, being able to have a virtual meeting saves so much time. A physical meeting always takes more time. And yes, you're losing out on these other benefits. Yes, I understand that. And if you're only doing virtual meetings, I know it's it kind of affects you, but it's still a good thing. You're able to work remotely, you're able to, interact with all these other people and not have to, imagine if virtual meetings didn't exist. What would your life look like? Would you be able to even do the work that you do? Could you interact with the people that you interact with? For that reason, I'd say it's underrated. Even though people hate them, it's it's necessary evil.
New Zealand.
New Zealand is, you know what? I like living in New Zealand. I live in New Zealand not because I have to, but because I want to. I think it's a beautiful country. I think in a lot of ways, though, I think it is overrated. I think it's always that grass is greener on the other side type of thing. And I say this knowing that the entire world sees New Zealand as almost this utopia. I think, anyway. I think that's the impression that a lot of people have, is this a beautiful, amazing place where everything is really great and the healthcare is free. And that's good. The fact that healthcare is free is good. I'd much rather live in New Zealand than in the US, for example, where I don't know, if I get hit by a car, I'll probably just die. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on in terms of New Zealand's policy, politics, as well as the nature of the policies and sort of internalized and institutionalized racism. the climate change policies and level of proactiveness. It's like this clean green image is like, do we really deserve that really? Or are we just riding off of it because the country naturally happens to be beautiful and we've got such a small population that these problems don't seem too massive? Yeah, so a little overrated, I think, but still great.
Manifestation.
I feel like I'm gonna get hated on by like every single, I don't know, like TikTok, Instagram, I don't even know what you call them. They're just influencers for the sake of influencing. But I think it's like super overrated. I really think it's very overrated. I think I don't see the benefit of like all this manifestation stuff that is better than just doing like proper goal setting and planning. You know, like you get all the benefits. You know, it allows you to like focus in and centralize in and visualize where you want to go and think about it critically and make sure that everything is aligned to it. But at least in that, when you do proper goal setting and planning for it, you're actually aligning your actions and behavior for it as well. Whereas manifestation can be broad, and some people are like literally thinking they can manifest anything by just like speaking it into the universe. Well, let's do this. You speak into the universe, I'll do things. We'll meet up in 10 years and see where we got. Okay, let's just empirically test it.
The Feynman Technique.
Feynman Technique, I think it's pronounced, but Feynman Technique is underrated. The Feynman method is very good. It's a great introductory way of learning about how you can actually start breaking into some levels of higher order relational thinking in a very simple, easy to understand set of instructions. Again, and this is kind of the case with any type of self-regulated learning technique, is that there's always nuances and there's always different ways that it can go. Like you can try to do the technique, but you could interpret it wrong, or you might not be able to do the processing required to get the benefit from it, and then you wouldn't find it very effective. And so from an individual level, there's lots of other things to consider. But generally, if you're just shotgunning an approach, if I was talking to like a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old that's just getting into study strategies for the very first time, Feynman Technique would be definitely maybe top 10 on the list of things that I'd get them to start working with.
Okay. Space repetition.
Okay, well, look, I think most people, if you're watching this video, you potentially subscribe to me. And if you subscribe to me, you probably already know what my views are on space repetition. Let me be super clear. Space repetition is overrated. Space repetition is necessary. You can't avoid it, but you shouldn't abuse it. You need to know how to use it correctly, and you need to know how to use it for the right types of knowledge. You cannot spaced repetition your way. You cannot rote spaced repetition your way to success, right? Like just think about how easy it would be to succeed if that's all you needed to do. Especially now with AI, lower order learning is becoming less and less valuable anyway. Data availability and just knowing things is going to be less and less important. Spaced repetition, if you're not using it, use it. If you're not using it, use it. If you are using it, you're probably using it enough already. You don't have to do more and more. So having some lower order spaced repetition, active recall, just retrieval practice coverage is good. Once you've covered it, you're done. You don't have to just keep covering it more. Work on the other things that are going to increase your initial encoding or your ability to have interleaved retrieval or higher orders of retrieval. Those are the things that are going to get you more bang for buck.
Group assignments.
Group assignments are, yeah, they're overrated for sure, because most people in your group are not pulling their weight. And number two, most people that are giving you the assignments don't really know if their assignment is even going to help you in the first place. And then number three, they're often very annoying logistically and just to get your head around to try to complete them. There are some exceptions, obviously, but just as a blanket statement, and I'm saying this like I've looked through lots of different curriculums, and I've looked through different ways that educators and different institutions at both secondary and tertiary education tend to think about assignments. Well, I don't think it's very well thought out in a lot of ways. So I'm going to say in general, group assignments are kind of overrated. They can be really tokenistic as well.
Gaming.
Gaming. I mean, gaming is so hyped at the moment, right? Like it's such a popular thing. I think gaming is properly rated. It's fun. I like gaming. You know, if you're addicted, that's not good, but so is being addicted to anything. I think it gets a bad rep, but I don't think that bad rep is necessarily deserved, actually. So I'm gonna say that it's super hype and it has a bad rep, properly rated.
Study groups.
Study groups are generally underrated. I think people tend to avoid study groups in some situations because they haven't had good experiences with study groups before. And as a result, they don't feel like they will get benefit from it, so they avoid it. But I think if you know how to use study groups in the right way, and you know how to sort of facilitate it with each other, then I think study groups can be really beneficial actually. So yeah, underrated. So that's it for this episode of Overrated Underrated. If there's anything that I mentioned that you want me to dive into in more detail, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what it is that you want me to dive into, and also specify the question about what aspect of it you want me to dive into. In the very, very first Overrated Underrated video that we did for this, I just said leave a comment below on what you want me to expand on. People just said like the word expand on it, and I was like, what about it? So that was my fault this time. Be a little bit more specific. But anyway, thank you for watching. If you like this stuff, leave a like, leave a comment, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.